On a warm summer night in July 2007, the quiet town of Cheshire, Connecticut, became the scene of a nightmare that no one could have imagined. Cheshire was the kind of suburban town where families felt safe, leaving their doors unlocked, where neighbors waved to each other from their driveways, and where crime rarely went beyond the occasional traffic stop. But in one evening, that sense of safety and trust would be shattered forever. At the center of this tragedy was a family that, by all appearances, had everything to live for. Dr. William Petit was a respected physician, a man whose dedication to his patients and gentle personality had made him a beloved figure in the community. His wife, Jennifer Hawke-Petit, was equally admired, a compassionate nurse, a devoted wife, and above all, a caring mother. Together, they were raising two daughters who embodied hope and promise. 17-year-old Hayley was a standout student and athlete, preparing to begin her studies at Dartmouth College, while 11-year-old Michaela was a bright, sweet child with a love of cooking and a kind heart that touched everyone who knew her. The Petits were, in many ways, the ideal American family. On Sunday, July 22, 2007, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The family spent the day like so many others in summer. In the afternoon, Jennifer and Michaela went to the local supermarket to pick up some groceries for dinner. It was a simple, routine task, one that every parent and child has done countless times. But this visit to the grocery store would unknowingly set off a chain of events that would change their lives forever. Unbeknownst to them, two men were also in the store that afternoon. Their names were Stephen Hayes and Joshua Komisarjevsky. To outsiders, they looked like just another pair of customers wandering the aisles, but in reality, they were criminals, with dark pasts and even darker intentions. Hayes was 44 years old, a man with a long history of drug addiction and petty crime. Komisarjevsky, only 26, had been raised in a strict religious household, but had spiraled into a life of burglary and lawlessness. Both men had met through a halfway house and quickly bonded over their shared criminal tendencies. As fate would have it, they spotted Jennifer and Michaela in the grocery store that day. Something about the sight of them, perhaps the image of a well-dressed mother and her young daughter, caught Komisarjevsky's attention. He later admitted that he followed them through the store and then trailed their car home, carefully noting the location of the Petit residence. In that moment, the Petits had unknowingly been marked. That evening, the family gathered at home like they had so many times before. William read the Sunday paper and settled into his usual spot on the living room couch. Jennifer prepared for bed. Hayley and Michaela spent time together, their laughter filling the house. It was the picture of domestic peace, the kind of simple, comforting scene that plays out in households across the country. But outside their home, darkness was approaching. Hayes and Komisarjevsky had been making plans. For them, this was supposed to be a quick robbery, a way to grab some money and perhaps a car, nothing more. But as the hours ticked by, their intentions grew more sinister. Late into the night, as the Petits slept inside their comfortable suburban home, the two men quietly approached the house. Sometime after midnight, the nightmare began. Komisarjevsky slipped into the Petit residence through an unlocked door. He carried a baseball bat in his hand. Inside, he moved silently, searching for his first target. He found Dr. Petit asleep on the couch. Without hesitation, he swung the bat, striking him hard across the head. The blow was violent, leaving William dazed and bleeding, barely conscious. Bound with rope and left on the floor of the basement, he could do nothing but listen as the intruders moved through the house. Upstairs, Jennifer and the girls were abruptly awakened and confronted by the two strangers who now controlled their home. In an instant, their world had been turned upside down. What had started as a peaceful night of rest had become a nightmare of fear and confusion. Jennifer and the girls were tied up, their lives suddenly in the hands of men they had never seen before. For hours, the family remained hostages in their own home. Hayes and Komisarjevsky ransacked the house, looking for valuables, whispering to each other about what to do next. Outside, The neighborhood was quiet, unaware of the terror unfolding behind the Petit's front door. The night dragged on slowly, every moment filled with dread. For William, lying bloodied and bound, and for Jennifer and the girls, trembling in fear, time must have felt endless. This was only the beginning of what would become one of the most brutal crimes in modern American history. In the next part of this story, we will dive deeper into the horrific events that unfolded inside the Petit home as dawn approached, a chain of violence and cruelty that would leave the town of Cheshire, and indeed the entire nation, in shock. As the night dragged on, the situation inside the Petit home grew increasingly terrifying. What had initially seemed like a robbery had turned into something far more sinister. Hayes and Komisarjevsky, once strangers, had now become the rulers of this family's world, and every passing minute brought with it unimaginable fear. William Petit, barely conscious from the blows to his head, remained tied in the basement, unable to do anything as the chaos unfolded upstairs. His mind raced, a mixture of pain, confusion, and the desperate need to survive. Upstairs, Jennifer and her daughters were forced to sit quietly while the intruders moved through their home. Their voices were commanding, cruel, and unyielding. Jennifer tried to stay calm to protect her children, but there was only so much one person could do against two violent men with no conscience. The girls, terrified, clung to their mother, each movement a silent prayer for mercy. The first phase of the invasion was methodical. Hayes and Komisarjevsky searched the house for valuables, shoving furniture aside and rifling through drawers. But their intentions extended far beyond theft. It quickly became clear that they had no plan to leave the family unharmed. They forced Jennifer to write down the locations of hidden cash and bank information. Every command she obeyed, every movement she made, was done under the shadow of extreme threat. Even as she complied, the fear in her eyes spoke volumes of the horror that was unfolding. At one point, Jennifer was made to drive to a nearby bank with Komisarjevsky in the passenger seat, a gun pointed at her throughout the trip. The night air outside contrasted sharply with the terror inside her heart. Each second felt like an eternity, each stoplight a potential moment of death. By some small miracle, she was allowed to withdraw money without incident, but this temporary reprieve did little to lessen the looming danger. Back at the house, the daughters were not spared. The intruders subjected them to fear and humiliation, making it clear that resistance would be met with extreme violence. Their world had shrunk to a small basement and living room, to the faces of the men who had invaded every corner of their lives. The air was thick with dread. Every sound, every creak in the floorboards was amplified in terror. Hours passed. The intruders grew more brazen, their cruelty escalating as the night went on. What began as a robbery had now become an exercise in control, a display of power over lives that were completely defenseless. The boundaries of horror had shifted. There was no longer any pretense of reason or restraint. As dawn approached, the violence intensified. Jennifer and her daughters were forced into the most horrifying positions imaginable. At some point, the intruders made the decision that would seal the family's fate. They physically assaulted Jennifer, attempting to break her spirit and ensure her compliance. The children, still innocent and unaware of the full scope of their danger, clung to each other, as if holding on to hope itself could protect them. When William Petit finally regained enough consciousness, he could hear the faint sounds of movement above, muffled voices, doors opening and closing, the occasional metallic clatter of objects being moved. He realized, with a sinking feeling, that the ordeal his family was enduring was far worse than anything he had imagined. Every second that passed was a second of terror for his daughters and wife, and yet there was nothing he could do from the basement. His mind raced for a plan, any way to survive, any way to help them. Eventually, the intruders forced Jennifer back into the home, and the true horror of the night escalated further. In the early hours of Monday, July 23rd, the intruders carried out acts of brutality that would shock the nation. Jennifer was strangled to death, her body left in a position meant to intimidate and terrorize. The daughters, trapped in their own home, faced a fate even more cruel. Michaela and Hayley were confined in a part of the house where the intruders set a fire, leaving them no way to escape. Flames consumed their sanctuary, and the fire claimed their lives. Only Dr. Petit survived. Somehow, battered and bound, he managed to free himself and escape into the early morning light. His body was bruised and broken, his mind scarred by the events of the night, but he was alive, a solitary witness to a crime so heinous that even seasoned investigators struggled to comprehend the scale of its cruelty. When he emerged, he found the world outside unaware of the nightmare that had just ended inside his home. Neighbors, initially unaware of the unfolding tragedy, began to notice unusual activity. Emergency calls were made, and within hours, police arrived to find the Petit residence engulfed in chaos and flames. The reality of the crime was revealed in full. Two intruders had executed a meticulously cruel plan, taking lives and terrorizing a family in a way that defied imagination. As the investigation began, the identities of the intruders quickly came to light. Stephen Hayes and Joshua Komisarjevsky were arrested shortly after fleeing the scene, and the shocking details of their backgrounds in the night's events emerged. The public, and indeed the nation, struggled to comprehend the scale of the violence. Questions arose about why such brutality could exist in a peaceful community, and how two men could carry out such horrific acts against a single family without any apparent motive beyond malice and greed. The Cheshire murders would become a case that not only highlighted the depths of human cruelty, but also left a community and a country grappling with grief, anger, and the search for justice. In the next part of this story, we will explore the aftermath, the trial, the confessions, the sentencing, and the long-lasting impact this tragedy had on the survivors, the town, and the legal system in Connecticut. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the town of Cheshire was left in shock. The brutality of the crime had pierced the very heart of the community, leaving neighbors, friends, and even distant strangers grappling with disbelief. How could something so violent happen in a town known for its calm streets and safe neighborhoods? Families locked their doors, and parents held their children a little tighter, the innocence of their routines forever changed by the events that unfolded at the Petit home. Stephen Hayes and Joshua Komisarjevsky were quickly apprehended, and the investigation revealed the horrifying details of their criminal history and their actions on that fateful night. Hayes had a long record of drug use, burglary, and violent tendencies. Komisarjevsky, though younger, had been involved in numerous burglaries and had a growing history of escalating criminal behavior. Together, they represented a dangerous combination of experience, recklessness, and sheer malice. During the trial, prosecutors painted a picture of calculated cruelty. The defense attempted to argue mitigating circumstances, but the evidence of premeditation and brutality was overwhelming. Witnesses, forensic experts, and investigators testified in painstaking detail about the events of July 23, 2007. The accounts of Dr. Petit, who survived the ordeal, were chilling. He recounted the moments of terror, the helplessness he felt watching his family suffer, and the struggle to survive. His testimony became central to the case, offering an unflinching look at the human cost of the killer's actions. The trial revealed the extent of the intruders' cruelty. They had not merely intended to rob the Petit family. They had subjected each member to terror, assault, and violence. Jennifer Hawke-Petit had been forced to the bank under threat, the daughters terrorized and trapped, and Dr. Petit beaten nearly to death. The fire that claimed the lives of Michaela and Hayley added a horrifying finality to the crime, ensuring that the events of that night would leave a permanent scar on the community and on everyone who followed the case. In 2010, Stephen Hayes was sentenced to death, and in 2011, Joshua Komisarjevsky received the same sentence. Connecticut at the time still allowed capital punishment, and the sentences reflected the severity and cruelty of their crimes. However, the state later abolished the death penalty, leaving both men to serve life sentences without the possibility of parole. The legal system had delivered a verdict of justice, but it could never restore the lives that were lost or erase the trauma inflicted on the survivors. Dr. Petit, despite the immense physical and emotional trauma, chose to continue living a life of resilience. He eventually remarried and worked to rebuild a sense of normalcy in his life. His ability to survive and maintain his dignity in the face of such extreme loss became a symbol of endurance for many. Yet, the memory of that night remained etched in his mind, a constant reminder of the darkness that human beings are capable of inflicting upon one another. The Cheshire murders became more than just a criminal case. They became a cultural reference point for discussions on safety, evil, and the fragility of everyday life. The story highlighted how quickly peace can turn to chaos, how ordinary routines can be disrupted by the intrusion of malevolence, and how the consequences of unchecked violence can ripple through families and communities for years. Even today, the tragedy serves as a reminder of the importance of vigilance, community, and the strength of the human spirit in the aftermath of horror. It is also a testament to the courage of survivors like Dr. Petit, who managed to carry forward despite unimaginable loss. For those who study true crime, the Cheshire murders stand out not only for their brutality, but also for the profound lessons they offer about resilience, justice, and the impact of violence on ordinary lives. If you found this story compelling, disturbing, or simply worth remembering, make sure to support the channel. Hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more stories that explore the darkest corners of human behavior. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update, and leave a comment with your thoughts on this case or any other true crime story you'd like us to cover. Remember, these stories are reminders of how fragile life can be, how courage emerges in the darkest moments, and how justice, though sometimes delayed, still matters. Thank you for watching, and stay aware, stay safe.